Happy Sunday. Today we are going to be in Esther 8. We're going to cover Esther 8, 1 through 8. So just to catch up for anyone who doesn't know, right, Haman's plot has been revealed. The king has had him hanged on the gallows that he had created for Mordecai. And at this point, it's really left with God and Esther to figure out how to save the Jewish people, because the decree in Persia cannot be reversed. That was a real big law. So Esther has a real big task in front of her as we enter into 8 as to whether to ask the king to do something that goes against tradition. So let's jump into the verses and start talking about it. On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman the Jews' enemy unto Esther the queen, and Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told him what was under her. So that phrase, what was under her, is really what stands out first for me, because up until this time, Esther hadn't really disclosed not only her faith, but who Mordecai was to her. And he's not just a distant relative, right? He's her adopted father. He's raised her and guided her. So it's a big deal that all of a sudden she's finally telling her husband, hey, this is who this man is to me. And let's see what the king does once he finds out how close Mordecai is to Esther, and also is the man who has served him in the king's gate and saved his life. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. So when the king finds out who Mordecai is, he makes him his second guy, his first guy, but the second guy in the kingdom, right? So that ring that once had been this signifying of giving it to Haman and giving him power and giving him this authority that would have led to the destruction of the Jews is now given to Mordecai. And Haman's house, if you missed that in the first part of the verse, is given to Esther. So the irony here is that all that Haman had is then given to these Jewish people who he detested his entire life. So at this point now, it's the spotlight comes on Esther, right? It's time to see what she's going to do when God really moves the people. And Esther spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman and the Agagite, and the device that he had devised against the Jews. Now, that's a big deal, right? She is asking him to reverse Persian law, something that just doesn't happen in Persia. So she's really making a big request here. And notice she's falling down on her hands and knees, right? So fall on your knees and ask the king what you will of him, right? This very much, can sort of parallel to me, ask and ye shall receive, right? What we ask of Jesus Christ, what we ask of God. And there's no more humble way to do that than to actually get on your hands and knees when you pray. I know for myself, I'll say just personally here for a moment, that I cannot get lower, is what I say when I'm on the ground. Just being on the ground puts you in a place of submission to God that if you're struggling to find, the balance between God and this world that tugs at you, get on the floor. Get on the floor. You cannot get lower when it comes to Jesus Christ. But back to Esther. And said, if it please the king, and if I have found... Then the king held out the golden scepter towards Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king. So remember that when you come to the king, he can either have you killed or he can hold out his golden scepter. So this is the second time he's done that for Esther, which is letting her know you can request whatever you want. So this is the moment, really, where Esther's got to figure out how to make this request, not put it on Xerxes, Ahasuerus, who signed this law, who had a hand in all this, but to try and save the Jewish people, like a wailing siren, right? All right, let's join in with Esther. And said, if it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the king did seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews which are in all the king's provinces. So it's hard being a woman, right? We've discussed that all throughout Esther. And Esther approaches this in such a great way, right? Wise beyond her years, truly showing that she partners with God in this. She says to him, if it pleases you, if I please you, and this thing pleases you, can we make it right? So, we could interpret that as I love you. If you love me, if you like me, could you do this thing to save these people? And she doesn't ask him to reverse the law. That's what I want to call out here, right? Remember, that's against the Persian tradition. What she does is she asks him to reverse Haman's letters. And within Haman's letters is the destruction of the Jews. So she approaches this in a way that doesn't necessarily reverse the law, right? It just hasn't happened yet. But she does, all she asks is for the action of the letters to be reversed. Esther. That Esther and God. All right, let's see what happens next. For how can I endure to see the evil that should come upon my people? And how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Right? So she acknowledges something here that I think hasn't been spoken yet, but which was a real possibility. Is does her crown, her being queen, her marriage to the king, that probably could have given her an exemption, right? Mordecai could have had an exemption since he now has the king's ring. So this isn't no longer, to me, about saving their lives, right? It's about saving all of the people's lives. It's about it really truly being about them. And both her and Mordecai putting his new promotion, her marriage, her life on the line here for the king, saying, I can't watch my people be destroyed. This is for those that I love. This is, do this under remembrance of me. Once again, paralyzed to me, God, in sending his son down as giving sacrifice for us. It isn't for the Lord. It isn't for Jesus Christ. His throne was set. His sacrifice, his slaughter, his destruction, the way he stood on the cross, it all was for us. Right? And so we see parallels of that throughout Scripture. And this is one time where you see God's heart through Esther, God's heart through Mordecai, that it isn't just about these two children. It's about all of my children. All of my children are loved. All of them are under my wing, and I will protect them and move them the way that I see fit. It's such a great God moment. It's such a great aspect into God being who he is on the throne. All right, let's find out what happens. Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen, unto Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him that have hanged upon the gallows, because he had his hand upon the Jews. Write ye also for the Jews as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring, for the writing which is written in the king's name, and sealed with the king's ring, may no more be reversed. So this is real good to me, right? Some people may say that Ahasuerus has a little bit of irritation here, like, haven't I given you enough kind of a deal? But to me, it's really just him agreeing with her. It's just he's not going to be the hero. So often in our lives, we think we want a person, right? How many times have you just sat there and prayed and hoped that there would be a person who could be your hero, come in, swoop, and save the day? Yay! But that's not going to happen here. God is giving Esther the opportunity to really do the work of her faith and to deliver us through herself, right? So we're not going to have some Persian king come in and make it all good, but that doesn't mean the king's not in agreement with what's going to happen. He just knows the law, knows it can't be reversed, and at this point he's set on this path. Now, that there isn't a choice there. I agree with that. I just don't see the irritation that some would in this. To me, it's really about, hey, this is obviously what I got to do. And sometimes that's the best way as followers, right, who are submissive to others, to get leaders to realize something, is to say, hey, just show them, this is the path. This is the one path that has been ordained, that has been set. And what you need to do is just go ahead and agree to it. Okay, and so that leads us to the end of Esther 1 through 8. Now, it leaves on quite a cliffhanger. We got to see what happens here. They're going to write the letters. They're going to go out. And then what's going to happen next? We're not done yet. So join us later this week when we chat more about Esther, Mordecai, King Ahasuerus, and the Jewish people as they're about to be delivered by our main character, God. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. It's the beginning of December here. So this is a time of hope and love and peace. So peace be unto you. I hope that your families are doing well and that you are feeling the deliverance of the Lord. Happy Sunday. Chatting at Cheesman. Happy Sunday.